Hola, hola, and welcome to Cultura Cash. This is Gigi, your host. I'm a finfluencer, financial educator, speaker, and the award-winning author of Cultura Cash. On today's episode, I'll be answering all your entrepreneur questions. These are questions that were specifically submitted by Michelle, who I am connected to on LinkedIn. But first, as always, some quick housekeeping. Author stops. The Phoenix stop is confirmed. I am so happy to share with you that we secured a venue, and the event will be on September 11th. The venue will be at Amor Collective, and I will be in conversation with fellow First Gen Latina leader Gina Moreno. Gina and I have collaborated over the last 4 years on reels, lives, all kinds of stuff. So it's really cool and we've never met in person, actually. Now that I think about it, I feel like we have, because we've done so much online together, but we actually have not physically met in person. So that'll be a really nice treat for me. I know a lot of you guys follow her too. We're very like-minded. We talk about similar things. So that'll be a really great discussion. We're going to have a moderated discussion with her, and then there will be opportunity for Q&A. We'll have some book signing, and then while the book signing is happening, you can have some mingling time to network with other like-minded Latinas. The event will be from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. Hopefully that is after the Phoenix traffic dies down a bit. So hopefully you guys are able to make that. The tickets are $20 and will be on sale soon. So keep an eye out on my newsletter and my social, specifically Instagram stories, Instagram infeed, and LinkedIn. TikTok, the algorithm is crazy, so it might not show it to you. So just make sure to keep an eye out there. Second, I am still available for Hispanic Heritage Month and First Gen Week speaking engagements, especially if your company is looking to host a virtual event, whether it's a fireside chat, a workshop led by me, or a lunch and learn. If you're interested in that, go to my website, thefirstgenmentor.com, to submit an inquiry, or feel free to DM me and I will walk you through the next steps. Now, back to today's topic, your entrepreneur questions. So again, these are questions submitted by Michelle from LinkedIn. She DM'd me and said, "Hey, I love your journey. I'd love to pick your brain and chat about being an entrepreneur. I'm thinking about doing that myself. Can we hop on a quick call?" And I said, you know what? Send me your questions, and instead I will do a podcast episode about this, because I'm sure this is information that other people would benefit from. So she followed through, and she sent me some very well-written questions that I'm excited to share with y'all. So the first one is, how was your experience going from corporate to entrepreneur? A lot of you already know this journey, so feel free to skip forward a little bit. But for those of you that are a bit newer, I did not have any interest in entrepreneurship. I was taught that the way to be successful in a work life was to have this stable corporate job. So I never had any ambitions to work for myself, own a business, which means I never took an entrepreneurship class, an entrepreneurship course. I didn't listen to entrepreneurship podcasts or have really entrepreneur friends. A lot of my friends were like me, that they worked in corporate W-2 jobs. So because I was thrown into entrepreneurship, and I'll discuss that more in the next question, I had to learn as I go. And that was hard in the beginning, because when you're an entrepreneur, you have to create your own structure. When you have a boss, they tell you, work on this right now, and in this time, work at that. When you are your own boss, you have to be able to organize your calendar, meet deadlines, create your own goals, and build that structure. So a lot of people that haven't had the corporate experience struggle with this. I've seen a lot of people that are inspired by my journey, but maybe they're in their early 20s and they think they can just jump into entrepreneurship. I always recommend a few years of working in corporate first, because you're learning how to conduct yourself in business, but being paid, right, by a company. So there's a lot of takeaways that you are able to get from a quote unquote stable corporate job. The second question, what pushed you to make the jump? I wasn't super eager to make the jump. What happened was I couldn't do my side job, which was being a content creator and a paid financial speaker, while I was working at my corporate job, which was at Northern Trust. Northern Trust is a big bank, and it is heavily regulated. The banking industry as a whole is heavily regulated, which means that if I wanted to take any paid outside work, it first had to be cleared through HR. So that means if I wanted to pick up a side hustle, doing Instacart and delivering groceries for some extra cash, or I wanted to do Rover to dog sit, I had to get that cleared by HR first to be able to do it while I had my primary job at Northern Trust. So through TikTok, as I built a following, I had the ability to make money through brand deals. I was getting a lot of emails of, hey, what's your rate? We'd love to work with you for a brand deal. Or I was getting a lot of inquiries for, hey, we'd love for you to come speak to our students about financial literacy. What is your rate for a 1-hour webinar, right? So I had these opportunities, but I needed the written approval. So I could have just done it and hope not to get caught, but I just wanted to do everything by the book. I wanted to feel good about it. And honestly, I'm so glad I did, because eventually my account grew to the point where a lot of people in real life saw I was doing what I was doing. So I would have gotten caught for sure. So if anybody's thinking about doing like that, it's just better to get it cleared. So anywho, I submitted for approval with HR. I was very optimistic because I thought it was good work that I could be potentially doing in my community, sharing accessible financial education with First Gen and Latinos and really the underserved communities. But I was slapped in the face when HR emailed me back right away and said, no, we will not allow you to take on this kind of outside paid work because it's illegal and a reputational risk for Northern Trust, which I completely understand, right? HR is there to protect Northern Trust, and they evaluated that it wasn't in Northern Trust's best interest to have one of their employees go out and present themselves as a financial expert or somebody who knows a lot about personal finance, because if I misspoke or if I said I learned all this stuff at Northern Trust, you should trust me because of that, then that's again illegal and a reputational risk. I would never be that slimy to be like, and because of my job at Northern Trust, I don't clout chase. I, if anything, have always credited the books and over 50 books that I've read to learn about financial literacy as well as lived experience. Obviously, working in the finance sector helps in some sense, but I would never clout chase in that way. That's just not my style. When I first got the news, I was devastated because I really was hoping to be able to do both. I had never had a side hustle before that, so I had always heard that having another stream of income was a smart thing to do. And I'm like, oh, cool. I get the opportunity to make money doing fun content on TikTok or doing webinars with students. And I was devastated when I got those news that I was not going to be able to do it while being employed at Northern Trust. So my first reaction was just to stop this side hustle. I'd only been doing it like 2 or 3 months, and to just focus on my corporate career because I'd worked so hard to get to where I was at in my career as an investment performance measurement analyst. And I finally had learned the unspoken rules about what it was going to take to go up the corporate ladder, to be visible, how to self-advocate. It took me 10 years, honestly, to learn the ropes. And I liked my role. I liked the daily work that I did. I liked the work environment, my boss, my colleagues, the company. Honestly, it was the best place that I've ever worked at in my corporate career. So initially I was going to say, oh, okay, well, this is where the road ends, right? So much for that. But an old friend, Chava, convinced me to take a bet on myself. And, other people had mentioned this. My husband, I think he was my fiance at the time. No, we had just gotten married. So yeah, David had said, hey, you think you should explore this? You're like a money geek and you love talking about this stuff. Why not make money out of it? So he actually was very encouraging. So we were my 2 best friends, and I was really offended when they pushed me that way, because in order to make that happen, I was going to have to tap into money that I had saved for a sabbatical. And I was like, how dare you suggest I use my sabbatical money to build a business when I've been working for the sabbatical money like 2.5 years? Like, how dare you? But again, when I talked to my old friend Chava, we talked on the phone an hour, and it's funny because I hadn't talked to him in 10 years, but he's just one of those friends that like you see and you reconnect, and it just feels like you just it hasn't been that much time since you've seen each other. And he just listened to me. He's a teacher. He's a high school teacher. So he's just a really good listener. And he says, hey, like, you got to do this. You got to do this. You've always taken the safe route. You pick like a safe degree. I majored in economics for the job stability, right? Even your first job working in insurance, it wasn't the most fulfilling job, but you needed it for the paycheck. He's like, you've always taken the safe route. And I think you owe it to yourself and to our community, who was very intentional about saying that, to take a bet on yourself and see where this goes, and if this goes well, you can be that representation or source of inspiration for other women that look like you, that it's okay to take a chance, right? And he's like, and if it doesn't work out, you can just go back to what you were doing before. You can go back to what you were doing before. He said, is your boss going to get mad if you quit? I'm like, no, I wouldn't just leave like one day to the next. Of course, I would give plenty of notice and do things the right way. He's like, yeah, you could probably go back. So he's like, the worst outcome is you just go back to what you were doing before. So that was a very emotional conversation. I'm very thankful that Chava took the time to talk to me. He's a busy dad, husband, and again, he's a teacher, but he made the time to sit with me and listen to my concerns, especially after not seeing him in so long in person. So I sat with that, with what he told me, and I reflected on it. I still felt conflicted because, again, I'd worked really hard to get myself to Northern Trust, to be at a company that I like, with a boss I liked, and all these nice things that I enjoyed about working there. But I ultimately decided I didn't want to have regrets. I didn't want to be on my deathbed, as morbid as that sounds, and think, what if I would have pursued that? I wonder what could have happened. I wonder what that would have looked like. I wonder what I could have achieved. I didn't want to live with that regret. And I thought to myself, I'd rather go for it and know that I can go for it. And if I fail, go back to corporate, but knowing at the end of the day that at least I had the guts to try, and not that I was too scared to do it. So again, I heavily credit Chava for that introspection, because before that, I mean, like we're taught to play it safe, right? And I'll talk more about the family dynamics of it all, but nobody had really encouraged me to take kind of the uncharted path before. I mean, I'd argue that being the first in my family to go to college is an uncharted path, right? As first gen, but most people know the outcome. You're probably going to get a better job than if you hadn't gotten a bachelor's, right? Probably going to have higher earning potential. Or with entrepreneurship, it's sink or swim, right? So it's a bit different. So that is what pushed me to make the jump. The third question is, as a first gen Latina, can you explain some of the challenges you have encountered as a business owner? Yes. So the first one, specifically to being first gen Latina, is, again, your family's approval. I talked about this a bunch. I even had a speech about this with Latinos Progresando during MEX Talks in Chicago. And I talk about how, as an entrepreneur, you have to be able to do it with or without your family's approval. And the reason for that is because your family may not understand why you're giving up a quote unquote steady job to pursue the unknown. I had actually two different reactions from my parents. My parents are divorced. So my dad was not accepting of my decision. He was like, "Estás loca? ¿Para qué te quemaste las pestañas todos estos años? Nomás para cuitear todo y andar de empresaria según tú." And what's funny is that he's an entrepreneur himself. So maybe that's where he was coming from. Now that I think about it, right? He worked for himself. It was a one-man shop, renting brincolinas and tables and chairs. So he knew que era una chinga, right? To do everything by yourself. And he saw that I had a cushy job with AC, a desk job, that sort of thing, right? So he's just like, you have it good. Why would you leave that for entrepreneurship? And when you don't know if it's going to work? And I'm like, Dad, I know, but I owe this to myself. I have savings set aside, so I'm not going to be living under a bridge. Like I'll be fine. And nobody's taking away my education. Nobody's taking away my work experience, my network. I actually left an excellent standing, so I'll be able to go back to work if I need to at my old job. Maybe not my same role, right? But it's a huge company. It's a Fortune 500 company, and they'd be able to squeeze me in somewhere. So that was my dad's take. I'm his favorite, which means we're close, which means we have really unfiltered conversations with each other. So he was straight up like, I don't get it, so I can't support you, but you're a big girl. You're a big girl and you're going to find out. I said, okay, I'm like, that's fine. That's all I need to hear. Like, that's fine. I wasn't asking him for money. I wasn't asking him for anything. I wasn't even asking him for emotional support. I was just communicating the news to him, right? My mom, on the other end, was very supportive, which some of you may find surprising. Some of you that have been with me for a while know that my mom and I, unfortunately, have a very dysfunctional relationship. She's what they call emotionally immature parent. So she's not like a source of emotional support or somebody I can count on. But at the time, we were good, and I shared the news with her, and she actually was very supportive. When I tell you more about my mom, though, it kind of makes sense why she was so supportive. My mom is very much like the embodiment of YOLO. Like, she doesn't plan for the future. She's just like, you got to live your best life today because tomorrow you can get hit by a bus. So for her, she just saw it as like, yeah, who cares? Like, you love doing this, you're good at it, go for it. So that was refreshing, right? Compared to my dad, who's very risk averse and was like, no, take the safe route, keep the safe route. But I knew that, again, although it was nice that my mom was encouraging, I also was like, consider the source. Right. So again, I knew that regardless of whether they were supportive or not, I had to be trusting of my situation and know that I'd be able to figure it out. So that's something that I think a lot of First Gen Latinas struggle with, that they are looking for their family's approval, and most of the time you won't get it. So it's very important to be able to surround yourself with community. And we'll talk about that later in the episode about how you can do that to be able to move forward with your entrepreneur ventures, ambitions without that family support. And you know what happens once you're successful? Family's like, I always knew you could do it. Like my dad, now that I've been doing this, I'm on my 5th year of doing this. He's so proud of me. He always says me, Hela chingona, when I'm featured on the New York Times, Business Insider, all these cool publications, all these cool speaking stages, opportunities that I have. He's like, I always knew you could do it. And I'm like, dude, no, you didn't. I'll call him out, But it's just funny. Sometimes I got to see it to believe it, It's hard, and think about it from their perspective, right? If our parents lived in survival mode and they didn't have the ability to dream and think of and have the privilege really to chase their ambition or a fulfilling career as opposed to just getting a job that paid the bills, like they can't even fathom doing something like that. So that's why it's important to again, surround yourself by people who have done it, by people that have been successful, whether that's other entrepreneurs, business coaches, communities that provide that sort of support. And again, we'll talk about that in one of the questions because it comes up. Another challenge that I encountered specifically as a First Gen Latina business owner, I would say, is funding. Funding is a challenge for, I would argue, every entrepreneur, but I would argue more for First Gen Latinas. Why? So it costs money to start a business. You're going to have to create a new website. You're going to have to probably take professional photos, headshots, sign up for subscription services. Like for my email list, I use ConvertKit. I think they charge me like $400 a year. Teachable, where I have my investing course, charges me $90 a month, right? So there's all these subscription services. Calendly is another popular one, right? Where people set up meetings. So there's a lot of startup costs and ongoing costs that happen when you start a new business. Of course, you have to register your business license, all these things. And if you're a product-based business, because I'm talking about service-based business, where for all these expenses, but if you're a product-based business, you even have more expenses because you have to think about inventory and supplies. It's a lot of stuff. So other entrepreneurs that are more privileged have access to family capital. Like the perfect story of somebody like Jeff Bezos, who, when he came up with Amazon in the 90s, he was able to borrow $250K from his parents to start Amazon. He just had this idea, right, of what Amazon could be. And I mean, I cannot borrow $250,000 from my parents for a business venture. I'm pretty sure most of you guys listening can't either. That's just not our experience as First Gen Latinas. So that's a barrier already, right? Not having access to that family capital or even the network, right? That more privileged people like that would have, like an uncle who's an entrepreneur in a white collar business and can kind of walk you and give you some pointers. It's different for us. So it's been a challenge. The other challenge when it comes to funding is there's, especially in today's climate, 2025, I'm recording this August 2025, there's limited grants. That's another way to get funding. And I was really lucky that when I started my business in 2021, this is post George Floyd, post the BLM movement, all these things that really shifted culture back then. There were a lot of opportunities for grants for people of color, the BIPOC community. I was able to win $50,000 through the TikTok Latinx grant program. People are like, wow, how can I apply for that? Unfortunately, it doesn't exist anymore. Maybe it will in the future, but since they had it in 2022, they haven't had it again. We All Grow Latina, fabulous Latina organization that recently sold. They would have grants for Latina business owners. So there was a lot of that before, and it was still competitive, right? Because there's a lot of need. But in today's climate, in Trump's presidency, in this racist presidency that we have, a lot of those programs are under attack. They get sued. And it just doesn't make sense, right, for people to take on the risk. So unfortunately, that's definitely taken a hit to small business owners that are interested in funding their business through grants. And if you even have a bigger business idea where you're trying to pursue venture capital investors, I mean, ni se diga. I don't even want to get into like the sad statistics. I think it's like less than 2% of venture capital money goes to Latinas. I think it might be worse, honestly. So it's sad, right? They're so willing to bet on white men, but when it comes to us, even though we're so strappy and smart and resilient, we don't get that same opportunity. So those have been some of the main challenges, specifically as a first-gen Latina business owner. The other question is, I am struggling with finding out what I want to focus on in my business. How did you find out financial literacy and education is what you wanted to focus on? This is an important question because entrepreneurship requires a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of commitment, especially in the beginning. Really think of it like as a newborn baby. It's very needy. You're going to have long nights. You're going to work on the weekends. I work so many holidays. Maybe the first 2-3 years. I'd argue the first 2 years were the toughest. And that's really what it takes to be able for you to build something from the ground up. And if you don't love what you do, you're easily going to give up. You're going to be like, screw this. What's the point of this? And I had that moment many times where I felt like it was so much easier just to go back to my spreadsheets and Northern Trust and listen to my podcast instead of, really building my brand from nothing and having to constantly put out content and do interviews and podcasts. So I have felt that. But what kept me going was my passion for what I did, and that was to teach financial literacy, financial education to the first gen community and Latinas and other women of color. So it's very important for you to, again, love what you do or have a passion for the big vision, right, of what you want your business or your product or your service to grow to. For me, I developed this money obsession and became a money geek in 2019. when I started immersing myself in financial literacy books. I learned all that I could, and then I reached a point where I'm like, I'm good. I've read all the books. Honestly, I'm not really learning new stuff anymore regarding the fundamentals of money, but I wanted to share my new knowledge with others. So that's when I started volunteering with the YWCA. So this was unpaid because I was a volunteer. And what I didn't know at the time was that by volunteering with the YWCA, they were giving me time and experience, right, to practice to be a paid financial educator. I didn't know it at the time. At the time, I just wanted to serve my community and pour into my community and share my new knowledge. But now looking back, when people tell me or ask me, aren't you scared to speak on stage with all these people? And I said, no, because I had practice, a lot of practice where there wasn't a lot of risk, right? Because when you're doing it on a volunteer basis, there's not much expected of you, right? Like, and community members that attend, they know that it's people being generous with their time and donating their time. So it's like a less stressful environment where once you are getting paid, you really have to step it up, right? And show your worth. So that time for me volunteering, doing what I love, which was sharing financial literacy with others, it really helped me ultimately be able to build a practice as a paid financial educator. Something here that I wish I had heard of before as you're trying to navigate what your passion is, what you can monetize, is this Japanese concept of ikigai. I believe it's Japanese. And the best way that you can look at this is by Googling it. It's a chart. So ikigai is spelled Ikigai. So again, Ikigai. So if you Google that, you're going to come across the Ikigai chart, which has 4 elements. I'm pulling it up so I can describe it. So according to this Japanese concept, if the thing that you're trying to do matches these 4 categories, then you're ultimately going to be in alignment. You're going to be paid. You're going to be fulfilled by the work you do. There's going to be demand for what you do. It's great. So these are the 4 questions that are taken into consideration. You have to ask yourself, what do you love? So think about that and then answer, what does the world need? The 3rd question is what you can be paid for. And then the 4th, I'd argue, is the most important, is what are you good at? Right? And by answering these questions, it's going to make sure that it hits on your passion, your mission, your job fulfillment, your profession. So for me, financial literacy hit all these 4 buckets. I didn't know about, again, this notion of ikigai, but when I later learned about it, I'm like, oh, this is why this feels so aligned, because it checks all the boxes. So for me, what do you love? I love teaching people about money. Am I good at it? What are you good at? Yes, I'm good at it because I'm so passionate about it, and I'm able to break down difficult concepts into like easy to digest information. I'm good at it. What does the world need? Does the world need more financial education? Yes. They don't teach us this stuff in school, and especially if you're from the Latino community, we don't get access to that information. So yes, the world needs this. And then that last question, well, can you be paid for it? I didn't even know when I was volunteering at the YWCA that I could be paid to be a financial educator. I didn't know that that was a paid career. So I only learned that later through TikTok when I started getting requests. So that's why what I do is really rewarding and fulfilling. It's still work because work is work. So I still get tired. I still get burnt out just like everybody else. But it's a by far the most rewarding job I have had because it checks all those boxes. So I highly recommend you look into the Ikigai and spend some time reflecting on those questions. I think this is our last question. So to wrap it up, the last question says, I have worked hard to get where I am in my corporate job, but I know I want to go on my own because I want the freedom and flexibility. What advice do you have for those on the fence of making the jump to full entrepreneur? Give me a sec. I want to take a gulp of water. All right. So I love this question because I haven't gotten a chance to focus on this content, which is empowering more women to take an interest in entrepreneurship, right? I'm so busy being an entrepreneur that to make that additional content is just something I don't have the bandwidth right now. So I love that we're dedicating an episode just to this, right? To do a deep dive on this. I am a way better entrepreneur than I was an employee. Who would have thought? If I had known this about myself, I would have pursued entrepreneurship way sooner. But I didn't know because I really didn't have the representation in my life of what white collar entrepreneurship looked like. So that was really eye opening when I realized that I could build my own schedule, pick my own clients, set my own rate, set my own goals, and that I would have more fun. I'd be more fulfilled as a person than when I was doing a 9 to 5. As a 9 to 5, I mean, I unfortunately got stuck with a lot of bad bosses, petty employees, jealous employees. And then again, it wasn't until Northern Trust that I actually felt like I fit. So that's why it was so hard to leave that. Because I'm like, really? I've been on the struggle bus this whole time, jumping around from company to company, trying to find the match. And now that I found something that works, now there's this opportunity to leave and do entrepreneurship, which I've never had an interest in. So it was a weird situation for me, but I'm very thankful for the journey. And yes, I want more women to be open to taking an interest in entrepreneurship because the time flexibility that you get is unmatched. I mean, for the last 4 or 5 years, I haven't had to ask somebody for permission to go on vacation. When my grandfather passed away, I didn't have to email and, hey, can I get bereavement? No, you just do what you want, right? Because you work for yourself. And that freedom, honestly, it's priceless. It's priceless and it's unmatched. The other things I don't miss about working in corporate are no stupid town halls, no office cooler talk, pointless meetings that could have been emails, performance evaluations that don't really, for me especially, they didn't really accurately capture my contributions. Of course, no politics. So I really, really enjoy being an entrepreneur. And also, I want to share the money can be great. I think a lot of people have this, there's this myth, right? If you're an entrepreneur, you're going to be broke, and that's why you're better off being a W-2 employee and working for a stable company. I mean, entrepreneurship comes with a lot of risks, but when there's more risks, there's a potential for more rewards. So I have surpassed my salary that I had in corporate, which was surprising to me, honestly. I thought I was going to have to take a huge pay cut, but I've been very financially abundant doing what I love, and that's really, really cool. And I'm glad I get to share this part with other women, and hopefully that's a source of inspiration. Another favorite part of entrepreneurship is that I've been able to untether my life before with my career in investment performance measurement, working for either a bank or some other sort of financial institution. Because it's such an old school industry, they want you at a desk. They're not really going to let you work from home. It's not really a thing. They allowed us during the pandemic because that was just the unprecedented times we were living in, right? But now that things are quote unquote back to normal, everybody's expected to be in the office. And had I stayed in that career, even with Northern Trust, as much as I like them, I wouldn't have the ability to have relocated to Spain like I have. Now that I'm fully remote, I can do that. I can work from anywhere as long as I'm able to secure a visa, right? And I have an internet connection. So that freedom, not just of the time, but also location independence, is really cool. Really cool, especially as a service-based entrepreneur. If you are on the fence, if entrepreneurship is for you, what I would suggest would be to keep informing yourself and keep looking for inspiration. of entrepreneurship. So again, I had never read any books, listened to any podcasts about entrepreneurship. So do that, right? Listen to podcasts where entrepreneurs are interviewed, especially when it's other women of color. These are some that I highly recommend. I've actually been a guest on all 3 podcasts. So I love all 3 podcasts. The first one is Courage Driven Latina with my girl, Erica Cruz. The other one is Brown Ambition with Mandy Money. Hey, girl. And then the other one is So Money with Farnoosh. So these are podcasts that they do talk about different things, but definitely an element that always comes up in these 3 podcasts is interviewing ambitious women, entrepreneurs, and talking about their journey and their highs and lows and their mistakes and what they would have done differently. So I think that's going to be a great source of inspiration, and also kind of give you like a behind the scenes look into what entrepreneurship looks like. You'll get to learn from their mistakes. Like, God, if I would have had the time to do my research before I was thrown into it, I could have saved myself some money. And honestly, the first thing that comes to mind of one of the early mistakes I made is I hired one of my followers to do my website. She reached out to me and she said, hey, I saw that you're, working for yourself now. I've been following you for a while and I want to help you build your website. And I thought that just because she was my follower, and she wasn't like a random person. She's somebody that I had interacted with on socials, right? So she was a consistent person, right? So I'm like, okay, I looked at her portfolio, it looked decent. And I paid her, I think, a couple $1,000, probably $2,000 to work on my website. And let's just say the work did not meet my needs to keep it nice. And it just wasn't a fit. It wasn't a fit. The communication was very poor. She couldn't meet deadlines. She didn't get the aesthetic that I wanted. So ultimately, I lost that money. This was my first year of business. Now looking back, I should have been like, girl, this is not working out and I need a partial refund because this is trash, And she knew it was trash. She was a very early website designer herself. But I didn't know. I didn't know how business worked. So had I listened to podcasts or interviewed other entrepreneurs, I would have heard about those mistakes and I could have avoided them and saved money along the way. It's also good for you to listen to other entrepreneurs and how they did it, because you can also get ideas on potential business ventures that maybe you hadn't considered, right? So if you do the Ikigai and you're still kind of stuck, listen to different entrepreneurship podcasts and see how people are making new streams of income, because it might be something that you hadn't thought about. You should also look into joining communities where women are supporting each other in their entrepreneurship ambitions. So I love the Mujeron movement that's ran by my girl Sonia. She's out in Phoenix. So she has a yearly summit where people get together and they share tips. ASE, the Hispanic Alliance of Career Enhancement, also has, I believe it's an online entrepreneurship program. There's a lot of stuff out there. But it's important to find community of other entrepreneurs so that you can swap tips and give each other referrals. And especially for, again, contractors to work with. Had I had a community of other entrepreneurs, I would have been able to ask, hey, who'd you work with on your website? Because if they work for you, they'll probably work for me. And I would have avoided just hiring some random that wanted me to work with them, right? So now I've learned the power in having a network and asking, hey, do you know somebody who would be good for podcast editing? Do you know somebody who would be good for video editing, right? Somebody who'd be a good virtual assistant. And that really is a way to have a smoother business, because hiring is hard. It's hard because you have to vet people yourself. There's onboarding involved. It's just a lot. So you want to make sure you hire right from the beginning. And the best way is by asking your entrepreneur friends what's working for them, as long as they don't gatekeep, of course. And my friends are fabulous, so they don't gatekeep. What else would I advise you for those on the fence? making the jump to full entrepreneurship. So again, inform yourself, listen to podcasts, success stories, mistakes, join communities. A huge element is also get your money right. You don't want to go into entrepreneurship in your neck, up to your neck in debt, with high expenses and no savings. No. You need to have security first. This doesn't mean that you need to be a millionaire. This means that you need to work on paying down your debt, cutting your debt to as low as you can, right? Cutting expenses, unnecessary expenses. Maybe you have one too many subscriptions. Maybe you eat out too much. Maybe you can move to a more affordable neighborhood, right? Maybe you can change your gym membership to a more affordable gym membership, whatever that is, right? Look into cutting your expenses to have increased savings so that you can have a money buffer, because I believe the statistic is that most businesses aren't profitable until their second year. So that's a long time to not be making money. I was fortunate that I was profitable after 6 months, but that means that the first 6 months, I wasn't getting paid. I was able to keep the lights on because I had 14 months of my living expenses saved up. So I was digging into those savings to sustain my expenses and also pay for the new business expenses and bootstrapping my business, right? Before I started getting enough revenue to have profit. So again, long story short, make sure that your money is right, that you feel financially secure before you throw yourself into entrepreneurship, because it is not for the weak. So for me, I'm grateful that I had 10 years of work experience, that I had a decent amount in my 401k. So I had money for the future for retirement. And that at that point I was debt free. I had paid off my student loans, my car loan, and I had the reason I had the 14 months of living expenses saved up was because, again, I was planning to do a sabbatical. So that's why I had that money. So some people might have to dig into like a down payment fund or whatever that is, right? So it's just about what's important to you. It's for me, my fork in the road is it important for you to go on the sabbatical ASAP or to explore this business opportunity? And for me, because of the pandemic, nobody was really traveling at the time anyways. And again, I didn't want to live with the regret of what if I don't pursue this? And ultimately, I'm happy with the way things worked out, because now instead of just going on a sabbatical for a year, now I can live permanently in Spain. So I'm really excited about that. So I hope this episode was helpful. Let me know if you want to hear more of this type of content. I've spoken about entrepreneurship several times, mostly on panels, and it's something that I love to keep sharing content on. If you take anything away from this episode, is that entrepreneurship is for you too. You are worthy of betting on yourself, but again, it's important to do it the smart way. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, share on IG stories, tag me at Gigi, the First Gen Mentor. I'll show you some love. Please rate and review. Leave review on Apple Podcasts. It helps other people discover the podcast because it gives them more credibility. And if you have any questions you'd like me to answer on future episodes, you can email me at hi@thefirstgenmentor.com. And I'm proud of myself for kind of sticking to a weekly cadence. I think switching it again from Money Mondays is working. So yeah, probably plan for new episodes Wednesdays or Thursdays. But yeah, just bear with me as I kind of get into the groove of that. Thanks for listening. Hasta la próxima.